Tonight we'll drift into another quiet corner of history, a corner so small and so peculiar it almost feels like a secret whisper from the past. So, before we begin, take a moment, dim your lights, pull the blanket just a little higher, snug around your shoulders, listen for the soft hum of silence around you, the faint whir of a fan, maybe even the gentle creak of your house settling for the night. This is your time to rest. Nothing urgent waits here. Only stories, slow, winding, and just boring enough to loosen the grip of your busy thoughts. And as you breathe into this stillness, I wonder, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there in your quiet corner? If this calm journey helps you unwind, perhaps tap like or subscribe, only if it feels right. Think of it as a lantern placed at the path's edge, guiding you back whenever you need more stillness. And so, tonight we ask, what happened if you sneezed during a Victorian wedding? The answer, my friend, is both less exciting and more curious than you might expect. Let's step gently into that world together. Imagine yourself walking down a cobblestone street in London sometime in the late 1800s. The air is thick with chimney smoke and the faint smell of fresh bread from a corner bakery. Horses clop lazily past, their drivers muffled in long coats. Somewhere, a distant church bell tolls the hour, not as crisp as the chimes on your phone today, but a slower, heavier sound that seems to linger like fog. Now, picture you've been invited to a Victorian wedding. Perhaps it's held in a parish church, cool stone walls echoing the hushed excitement of the gathered guests. Candles flicker in wrought iron holders, casting amber light across the pews. The air is sweet with the scent of flowers, roses and lilies arranged in tall vases, though some of them have begun to wilt just a touch. Florists weren't quite as fast as next-day delivery. And you're sitting quietly, waiting for the bride to appear. Your nose, however, has other plans. That tickle begins, you know the one, the unstoppable, inevitable prickle deep in your nostrils. A sneeze. Of all times, it chooses this. The hush of anticipation, the rustle of skirts, the soft cough of an elderly uncle. Into that delicate balance, you feel it rising. Have you ever noticed how a sneeze feels like a storm contained in a teacup? First the warning winds, then the swell, then the burst. Victorian guests would certainly have noticed. Sneezing in the midst of vows might have drawn as many glances as dropping your phone during a modern ceremony. But here's the curious thing. In the 19th century, sneezing wasn't always viewed as an inconvenience. Some considered it a sign of health, even good fortune. In certain rural parts of England, a well-timed sneeze could be taken as a blessing, a sort of uninvited but welcome guest at the proceedings. Others, however, saw it differently. A sneeze, uncontrolled in the solemn hush of matrimony. To some Victorians, it was considered slightly improper, not scandalous, not ruinous, just a little ripple in the otherwise perfect image. And so, depending on the family, you might be met with muffled chuckles or stern frowns, or perhaps the bride's grandmother whispering something about omens. Now, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Before the sneeze even came into question, Victorian weddings were already layered with traditions. Did you know that in 1840, when Queen Victoria married Prince Albert, she chose a white gown, a choice that sparked the long-standing Western tradition of brides in white? Before that, brides often wore coloured dresses, even dark ones. Imagine a sneeze against a backdrop of crimson velvet instead of ivory lace. Quite a different picture, isn't it? As you sit in that pew wrapped in candlelight and waiting for the sneeze to make its grand entrance, let's explore what the food afterward might have been like. Because what better way to soften the edges of history than through its table? At many Victorian weddings, guests would retire to a reception filled with sweets and savouries. One common treat was the bride's cake, a dense fruit cake covered in white icing, nothing like today's airy sponge layers. This cake was thick, rich, studded with raisins and currants, almost like a doorstop disguised as dessert. And here's where I invite you to imagine. Cutting into that fruitcake is like slicing through a brick politely dressed in sugar. Have you ever tried to balance a bite of fruitcake on your tongue and wondered if it might be closer to chewing a history textbook? That was the Victorian wedding cake. Heavy, lasting and symbolic. Now, if you sneeze during the ceremony, Some might have jokingly suggested it was the cake's fault. Too much spice, too much sugar, or perhaps a stray whiff of nutmeg tickling your nose. You might laugh quietly at yourself, covering the sound with a cough, just as we sometimes pretend we didn't trip on the S. And all the while, your sneeze is fading into memory. Already it's being replaced by other sensations, the sweetness of sugared almonds handed out in small paper packets, the cloying richness of fruitcake, the savoury comfort of roasted fowl. Do you notice how each flavour lingers differently? Almonds crisp then gone, cake sticky and heavy, roast smoky and grounding. Is almost as though the food itself was designed to mirror the stages of an evening. Light, dense and then mellow. The Victorians loved symbolism. To them, even a sneeze could carry meaning. In some households, a sneeze during a wedding was said to be a good omen, as if the body itself approved of the union. A strange thought, isn't it? That your involuntary burst of sound might be counted as a blessing equal to a priest's prayer. But in other circles, particularly among the stricter and more superstitious, sneezing might raise eyebrows. What if it was seen as a sign of ill health? A reminder that illness lurks so often at the edges of life in the 19th century. After all, colds, flus, even tuberculosis haunted daily existence. A sneeze could be more than an interruption. It could be a whisper of mortality. And so, while some guests chuckled kindly, others stiffened just a little. You might notice an elderly aunt shifting her chair slightly farther from yours, though still offering a polite smile. This was the balance of the Victorian age. Laughter and caution, superstition and science, all mingling together like the swirl of cream in a teacup. Speaking of tea, yes, it would certainly be present. Endless pots of strong, dark tea poured into porcelain cups with delicate gold rims, sugar cubes dropped in with a soft plink, milk swirling in pale clouds. Can you imagine holding that warm cup, the steam rising against your face, soothing your embarrassment and grounding you in the moment? Tea has always had that power, to steady, to soften, to invite pause. And as you sip, perhaps you overhear a conversation about the bride's gown. White satin, lace trim, a veil cascading down in frothy layers. Someone mentions Queen Victoria again, how she wore white and made it fashionable. Someone else wonders whether the lace was imported from Belgium or made by local hands. The details matter, for Victorians cherished appearances. Every stitch, every pearl, a quiet announcement of status. Now imagine the laughter swelling again, a toast being raised, glasses lifted, voices humming together in cheer. And in that sound your sneeze is completely forgotten, swept away by the tide of joy like a pebble lost in the river. As the evening wanes, some guests begin to leave, shawls wrapped tightly against the night air. The cool breeze greets them outside, carrying scents of damp stone and coal smoke. Inside, the fire still burns low, and you linger a little longer, savouring the last crumbs of cake, the final sips of tea. And when at last you step into the street, your breath rising in little clouds, the memory of your sneeze feels like nothing more than a curious footnote in a day woven with countless textures, laughter, music, flavours, shadows, warmth. Do you see how small moments stretch into stories? How even a sneeze at a wedding can open windows into a whole world? Now, as you drift further into this night, let your thoughts soften. The wedding is over. The streets are quiet. The glow of gas lamps flickers against the cobblestones, and the city hums with its endless sleepy breath. And slowly, gently, we'll let this chapter carry us toward the next corner of Victorian life, where another curiosity awaits. Let me guide you now to another wedding scene, though the hour is different. Imagine the morning sun peeking over tiled rooftops, casting a pale gold glow across narrow Victorian streets. The air is brisk, your breath puffing in small clouds as you make your way to another ceremony. This one is held in a countryside church, tucked among hedgerows and fields where sheep graze lazily, their soft bleats carrying faintly in the wind. The church smells faintly of wax and damp stone, the kind of cool scent that lingers in places where centuries of footsteps have polished the floors smooth. You slide into a wooden pew polished by generations of guests, the surface slightly sticky with varnish. The hush here is deeper than the city, quieter, steadier, as though the whole world is holding its breath. And yet, as you settle in, a curious sound interrupts the stillness. A muffled cough, then a soft sneeze from the front rows. You feel a ripple of recognition. It's the same little interruption we spoke of before. Isn't it strange how a sneeze can feel like a thunderclap in a silent room? In the Victorian countryside, such a sneeze might be met with murmurs about the weather. A chill in the air, someone might whisper. Or perhaps an omen of rain on their marriage. Superstitions seem to sprout like wildflowers, each one colourful in its own way. After the vows, the celebration spills outdoors. Long tables are arranged in the parish yard, where white cloths flutter in the breeze. Plates of seed cake are set out. Simple golden loaves flavoured with caraway seeds, their aroma both sweet and slightly peppery. Imagine breaking off a piece, the crust cracking softly, the interior crumbly yet dense. The taste is humble, homely, like something a grandmother might slip into your pocket with a wink. Children chase each other between the tables, skirts and trousers flashing like sparrows. A fiddle begins its song, lively and lilting, notes darting through the air like dragonflies. The grown-ups raise tankards of ale, frothy and bitter, the taste clinging to the tongue longer than you expect. You sip and your lips tingle from the carbonation, though it is gentler than the sharp fizz of modern sodas. And then another sneeze, this time from you. Heads turn, some laugh, some murmur, and you smile sheepishly. Someone offers you a kerchief, a square of fabric embroidered with tiny flowers, its edges softened by many washes. You press it to your nose, grateful. Isn't it comforting how such a small gesture can feel like an anchor in a sea of strangers? In the countryside, sneezes were sometimes taken as signs of vitality. Better out than in, the farmers might say, chuckling as though nature itself had joined the party. For them, life was entwined with the body's honest expressions, sneezes, coughs, the hearty laughter that echoed across fields. As the afternoon stretches, more dishes appear. Roasted mutton carved into thick slices, pies filled with apples stewed until soft, and trays of gooseberries dusted with sugar. The flavours mingle, savoury, tart, sweet, each bite telling a story of the land itself. Have you ever tasted gooseberries? They're sharp like little green sparks, yet softened with sugar they become something playful, almost mischievous on the tongue. And in the midst of it all, your sneeze is forgotten again, folded into the rhythm of laughter, clinking glasses, and children's shouts. By the time the sun dips low, painting the sky with streaks of rose and amber, you're nothing more than another happy guest, warmed by food and company. And as we step away from that countryside table, let your mind wander again, floating gently toward the next curiosity waiting in the Victorian age. Picture a grand Victorian townhouse, tall and narrow, its brick walls soot-stained from London's endless chimneys. Tonight, the wedding celebration moves indoors, away from country breezes and parish yards, into parlours thick with perfume and candlelight. The front door creaks open as you step inside, greeted first by a wave of warmth. The coal fires glow in iron grates, their orange light flickering against patterned wallpaper, roses and vines winding endlessly upward like dreams that refuse to end. The drawing room fills quickly with guests, their voices a soft tide rising and falling. Women fan themselves gently, feathers brushing the air. Men tug at their starched collars. The bride, pale and radiant in satin, is seated by the hearth while relatives cluster about her, like moths circling a lamp. And you, slipping quietly to the side, find a place near the tea service where you can observe unnoticed. It is here, among the delicate cups and sugar tongs, that another sneeze erupts. Not yours this time, but a groomsman's. It bursts into the room like a cannonball in a library, startling a few and amusing others. Imagine the red flush on his cheeks as he mutters apologies, dabbing at his nose with a crumpled handkerchief. Doesn't it always seem that the louder the room, the louder your sneeze becomes? As if the body is intent on drawing attention at precisely the wrong moment. The Victorians, ever fond of etiquette, had opinions about such interruptions. Proper manuals advised one to sneeze as discreetly as possible, turning away, muffling the sound. Some even suggested leaving the room, though who could manage that with a sneeze's sudden ambush? Guests here smile politely, then quickly return to their conversations. A sneeze may echo, but memory fades fast when there is food nearby. On the sideboard waits a curious centerpiece, a towering moulded jelly, quivering like a glass cathedral. Have you seen such Victorian marvels? Shaped in elaborate moulds, they caught the light and trembled at the faintest touch. This one glows amber with slices of orange suspended within, like fossils trapped in sugar. Imagine placing a spoon into its surface. It wobbles, sighs, and then gives way with a shiver. The taste is sweet but not overpowering, the citrus sharpness cutting through the sugar. Nearby lies a platter of cold meats. Tongue, ham, and pressed beef, sliced thin and arranged in neat circles. The flavors are salty, robust, perfect for balancing the sweetness of jellies and cakes. Imagine the contrast on your tongue. Savory one moment, sugary the next. It's like flipping from one dream to another without ever waking. Guests murmur over these delicacies, fanning themselves as the room grows warmer. Someone recalls that Prince Albert himself was fond of cold collations, preferring them even at formal dinners. A whisper of royal approval made any dish fashionable, no matter how odd. And so, cold tongue appears on wedding tables side by side with custards and trifles. Now the musicians begin again, a small quartet tucked near the staircase. Violins hum, a cello sighs, and the notes curl around the room like ribbons. Couples rise for a dance, skirts brushing, boots scuffing softly on polished wood. The movements are measured, careful, yet filled with a quiet joy. Watching them, you feel your eyelids grow heavy. Isn't it soothing, the way music and footsteps weave together, steady as a heartbeat? And then, as if on cue, another sneeze. This time from a child who's eaten too many sugared almonds. Laughter erupts, gentle and forgiving. For in truth, weddings were not meant to be perfect performances, but living gatherings where sneezes, spills, and stumbles all had their place. The Victorians, for all their strict manners, still found room to smile at the unpredictable. The night deepens, candles burn low, their wax pooling into soft shapes. The jelly is half gone, the meat's nearly finished. You cradle a final cup of tea, warmth seeping into your hands, steam fogging your glasses. Around you, voices grow softer, the party thinning as guests prepare for their carriages. Outside, the air is damp and cool, the gas lamps flickering faintly against the drizzle. And as you step into the night, you think back on the sneezes of the evening, how something so small can ripple through memory, leaving not scandal but gentle stories to retell on another day. Now, let your mind drift again, from the townhouse to yet another setting, another wedding, another soft curiosity, waiting quietly in the folds of Victorian history. The scene shifts now, from the townhouse to the seaside. Imagine a Victorian wedding taking place in Brighton, where the salty air rolls in from the channel and the cries of gulls echo faintly above the hum of human celebration. The bride and groom have chosen a fashionable coastal setting, something novel for their time, as railways had only recently made such journeys possible for middle-class families. You step into a seaside hotel ballroom where tall windows open toward the sea. The curtains flutter slightly, carrying the scent of salt and kelp, mingled with the heavier perfumes of guests. The floor is polished wood, gleaming like the surface of a calm tide pool. You can almost hear the faint hiss of waves outside, rolling endlessly against the shingle shore. As you take your place among the guests, the ceremony begins, words spoken slowly, voices carrying in that high-ceilinged hall. Then, just as the vows settle into silence, a guest at the back lets out a sudden, uncontrollable sneeze. The sound reverberates strangely, bouncing off the walls like a startled gull's cry. For a moment there's stillness. Then polite laughter ripples forward, a soft wave of forgiveness. The officiant smiles, steadying the rhythm, and the vows continue. Here by the sea, superstition takes on a different tone. Some whisper that sneezing before I do promises a life full of travel, as though the winds themselves have blessed the union. Others chuckle that it's merely the bracing seaside air, sharpening lungs unused to salt. Either way, the sneeze becomes part of the memory, folded neatly into the day's fabric. When the vows are done, the celebration begins in earnest. Tables groan with platters of seafood freshly caught that morning. Picture oysters on ice, their shells clinking faintly as they're opened, the briny scent rising sharp and clean. Some guests slurp them eagerly, savouring the taste of the sea itself. Others hesitate, poking at them with forks as though examining an alien specimen. Have you ever noticed how eating an oyster feels like swallowing a tiny ocean wave? It's a curious experience, equal parts strange and invigorating. Alongside the oysters are dishes of potted shrimp rich with butter and spices, spread onto slices of toast. The warmth of the bread softens the chill of the sea, and for a moment you are wrapped in the comfort of savoury flavours. To balance it, there are sweets. Lemon syllabub whipped into airy froth, sharp with citrus yet softened by cream. The contrast makes your tongue dance from salt to sweet, much like waves crashing and retreating on the shore. Children run along the veranda outside, their laughter mingling with the calls of gulls. Some chase bubbles blown from clay pipes, the soap glistening in the sunlight. The music indoors begins, a jaunty piano tune this time, quick and bright, echoing the energy of the seaside. Guests clap in rhythm, some daring a small dance, their shoes tapping lightly against the boards. And yet amid the joy, sneezes still come, perhaps from the cool sea breeze drifting through the windows, or from the perfumed flowers decorating the hall. Each sneeze is met with murmured blessings, some half-joking, some sincerely superstitious. You might even hear someone mutter the old phrase, "A sneeze before the kiss, fortune and bliss." The evening settles slowly. Candles are lit as the sun dips into the horizon, painting the waves in strokes of gold and rose. The sound of the sea deepens, steady, eternal, like the world's own lullaby. Guests linger over the last sips of punch, their laughter softer now, their eyes drawn to the dusky horizon beyond the glass. And you, stepping outside, feel the cool night air brush your cheeks. The salt tang fills your lungs, and for a moment you pause, listening. The sea hums its endless story, and your thoughts drift with it, carrying the memory of sneezes, oysters, and lemon cream into something dreamlike, half forgotten. And as you walk away from the seaside ballroom, let your mind wander still further, to yet another place, another wedding, another small curiosity waiting to be told. Picture yourself now in the rolling countryside of Yorkshire, where stone walls divide green fields, and a small village prepares for a wedding unlike the grand seaside or city affairs. Here, simplicity rules, but with a warmth that feels even richer than opulence. The little parish church is draped in ivy, its bell tower leaning slightly with age. Inside, candles flicker against stone walls, and the faint smell of hay clings to the coats of farmers who've hurried in from their fields. You sit on a creaky pew, listening as the vows are spoken. The air is hushed, almost reverent, until, there it is again, that inevitable sneeze. This time it comes from the bride herself, a delicate, high-pitched sound that startles the congregation into nervous chuckles. Imagine the blush on her cheeks as she covers her nose with a lace handkerchief, the groom squeezing her hand in reassurance. Isn't it funny how something so small can make a solemn moment suddenly human, warm, and endearing? In Yorkshire, such sneezes might be seen as rustic signs of good fortune. Old sayings floated about. A sneeze on the vows a child soon allows. Superstition and humour intertwined, softening what might otherwise feel like an awkward slip. The laughter subsides, the vows continue, and soon the church doors swing open, spilling everyone out into the sunlight. The reception here is held in a barn, its beams strung with garlands of dried flowers. A fiddler tunes his instrument in the corner, and soon the air hums with reels and jigs, the kind that set feet tapping before you even notice. Tables are laden with hearty fare, meat pies with golden crusts, sausages spiced just enough to tingle the tongue, and great wheels of cheese cut into generous wedges. Imagine slicing into a pork pie, the crust crisp and buttery, the filling dense with peppery pork. It's not delicate food, It's solid, satisfying, the kind of fare that anchors you to the earth. Have you ever bitten into something so hearty that it feels like a handshake from history itself? That is Yorkshire cooking, direct, bold, and comforting. Beside the pies sit baskets of oatcakes, flat and earthy, their texture rough against the tongue but softened with a pat of butter. Guests spread jam across them, the sweetness glistening like stained glass in the sunlight. Children dart between the tables, snatching oatcakes when no one is watching, their laughter carrying like birdsong through the rafters. And of course, no rustic wedding is complete without ale. Frothy pints poured into mugs that clink cheerfully in toasts. The bitterness balances the rich pies, leaving a warm trail in the throat. Toasts rise high, some formal, others sloppy but heartfelt. The bride sneezes again, mid-toast, sending a spray of ale-laced laughter through the room. By now, it's become a running joke, guests declaring it a triple blessing on the marriage. Later in the evening, sweets appear. Parkin, a dark ginger cake sticky with treacle, its spices warming the mouth. The flavour is both fiery and comforting, a reminder of hearth fires and autumn nights. Have you ever tasted something that seemed to glow from the inside out? Like embers tucked into a cake? That's Parkin, the Yorkshire treasure. As the music swells, couples whirl across the barn floor, boots stomping in rhythm, skirts flaring in arcs of colour. The fiddler plays faster, until the room feels alive with motion, laughter, and the pulse of joy. In the midst of it, sneezes are forgotten, swallowed whole by the merriment of the night. At last the barn grows quiet. Lanterns burn low, casting soft pools of light onto the hay-scattered floor. Guests drift homeward, shawls wrapped tight against the chill, while the bride and groom linger at the doorway framed by golden glow. You step outside, the crisp Yorkshire air filling your lungs, the scent of earth and hay grounding you. And as you walk down the narrow lane, the faint music still echoing in your ears, you realise that sometimes it is the small, unplanned moments, a sneeze, a laugh, a crumb of Parkin, that stay with us longest. Now let your thoughts float onward into yet another chapter, where another wedding and another curiosity await. The wedding shifts now to Scotland, where the heather blooms purple across the hillsides, and the air carries both chill and peat smoke. Picture a stone kirk perched atop a rise, its windows narrow and coloured with modest stained glass. Inside, the congregation gathers close together, their tartan shawls and woolen coats rustling softly like wind through reeds. The air is brisk even within, the scent of damp wool mingling with candle wax. The vows begin, spoken in lilting accents that carry a music of their own. The silence is reverent, steady, until, with perfect timing, a sneeze echoes through the kirk. This time it's from the minister himself. Imagine the ripple of amusement, guests biting back chuckles, the bride hiding a smile behind her bouquet. A minister's sneeze, they whisper, must surely mean God's own blessing, though some mischievous uncle mutters it was the peat smoke. In Scottish law, sneezes could carry many meanings. An old belief suggested that sneezing once was a blessing, twice a warning, thrice a prophecy. The congregation counts silently, just one sneeze, then nods to themselves with relief. The ceremony continues, laughter softened into warmth. Afterward, the guests pour out into the crisp air, their breath rising like smoke against the Highland mist. The reception is held in a great hall of stone, its beams blackened with age, its hearth roaring with flame. Long wooden tables stretch across the room, heavy with platters of traditional fare. There is haggis, of course, an iconic dish wrapped in sheep's stomach, filled with oats, suet and spices. Imagine the steam rising as it is cut open, the aroma earthy and rich, the texture hearty and comforting. To some, it is an acquired taste, to others, a treasure. Paired with neeps and tatties, mashed turnips and potatoes, the dish becomes less intimidating, more like a cousin to shepherd's pie. Have you ever tasted something odd at first bite, only to find it strangely warming after the second? That is haggis, peculiar yet endearing. Beside it sits cranachan, a dessert layered with oats, cream, honey and raspberries, the tartness and sweetness mingling with surprising grace. Each spoonful is a quiet celebration of the land itself. The oats from the fields, the honey from hives, the berries plucked from wild brambles. Guests murmur their delight, spoons clinking gently against glass. Music fills the hall, the drone of bagpipes at first, then fiddles and drums joining in. The rhythm is lively, urging guests to dance the reels. Boots stamp, skirts swish, laughter rises to the rafters. Even those who do not dance tap their feet, caught in the current of sound. The warmth of the fire, the taste of whiskey passed around in small glasses, it all wraps the evening in a blanket of cheer. And yet, as the night wears on, sneezes return. The chill air drifting in from a cracked window, the peat smoke curling from the hearth, they conspire to tease the noses of guests. Each sneeze is met with blessings, jokes, and raised glasses. May it be luck, someone calls, and everyone laughs, turning even the simplest interruption into part of the celebration. Later, when the dancing slows and the fire burns low, the hall takes on a drowsy glow. Candles gutter, their flames bending sideways in draughts. Plates are cleared, music softens, and guests begin to slip away into the misty night. You follow, stepping outside into air so crisp it tingles your lungs. The hills roll away into darkness, the sky scattered with faint stars. You pause for a moment, listening. A sheep bleats in the distance, a dog barks, and somewhere the faint echo of music drifts from the hall. The sneeze of the minister has already become a story, retold with laughter before the night has even ended. And isn't that the charm of such moments? That what might feel awkward becomes, with time, a thread in the tapestry of memory. Now, as you turn down the path toward the inn where you'll rest, let your thoughts float gently. The kirk, the laughter, the haggis, the cranachan, all fade like mist on the hills, leaving you calm, soothed, and ready to drift toward the next chapter of Victorian weddings. This time, imagine yourself in Ireland during the Victorian age. The fields are green, almost impossibly so, dotted with stone cottages and hedgerows that twist like lines on an old map. A village wedding is underway, and though the church is simple, the joy within it is unshakable. The walls are whitewashed, the pews rough-hewn, and the faint scent of turf smoke drifts in from a nearby hearth. The vows are spoken softly, with voices carrying that musical lilt unique to the Irish tongue. The moment is tender, held like glass, until, inevitably, a sneeze breaks free. This time, it comes from an elderly grandmother in the front row. She sneezes once, twice, then 3 times, her kerchief fluttering with each. The congregation chuckles warmly, some whispering that 3 sneezes are especially lucky. A long life and strong children, one aunt murmurs, nodding with satisfaction. After the ceremony, the guests gather in a thatched roof hall, its beams blackened by years of fire, its windows small but glowing with candlelight. The tables are sturdy, laid with platters of food brought by neighbours and kin. There is cold cannon, mashed potatoes blended with cabbage and scallions, buttery and smooth, the kind of dish that seems to hug you from the inside. Imagine taking a spoonful, the creaminess filling your mouth, the scallions adding just enough brightness to keep it lively. Beside it sit soda breads, round and rustic, their crusts dusted with flour. The crack as they're broken open is sharp, but inside the crumb is soft, slightly tangy from the buttermilk. Spread with butter, it melts instantly, soaking into the bread like sunlight into stone. Guests tear off pieces, pass them along, their laughter echoing louder than the crackle of the fire. For sweets there are porter cakes, fruit cakes made with dark, stout, rich and dense, their flavours deepened by molasses and spice. Each bite is a slow unfolding. Raisins, currants, candied peel, all laced with the faint bitterness of stout. It's a cake that lingers, little heavy but comforting, like a story that takes its time to tell itself. And of course the drink flows freely. Pints of stout are lifted, whiskey is poured in small glasses that catch the firelight. Toasts are given, sometimes serious, sometimes playful, and each one is met with cheers. The grandmother sneezes again mid-toast, and the room erupts in laughter, glasses raised in her honour. Isn't it curious how the smallest interruptions can become the heart of a memory? Music swells, first a fiddle, then a bodhrán drum, then voices lifting in song. Traditional airs fill the room, some slow and haunting, others fast and bright, urging feet to tap and heels to stomp. Soon the guests are dancing, their movements quick and light, skirts twirling, boots striking the floor in rhythmic joy. The air grows warm, the room alive with sound and motion. Yet through it all, there is softness. The fire glows steadily, the smell of peat rich and earthy. Children fall asleep in corners, their heads pillowed on shawls, their cheeks sticky with cake crumbs. Outside, the wind rustles the hedges, the night cool and calm, stars flickering faintly above the thatched roofs. By the time the dancing slows, the grandmother's sneezes have become a story told and retold that very night, exaggerated into legend. 3 sneezes, 3 blessings, someone says, and the room agrees. The sneeze is no longer an interruption. It has been transformed into a symbol of joy, of life, of the wedding itself. And as you step outside into the Irish night, your breath white in the cool air, you carry with you the warmth of potatoes and soda bread, the echo of fiddle strings, and the comfort of laughter rising from small human moments. Now, let your mind drift onward, carried softly like a tune across the fields, to yet another wedding, another tale, another sneeze waiting in the folds of Victorian time. This time picture a Victorian wedding not in the countryside, but in the heart of an industrial town. Imagine tall brick factories looming in the distance, their chimneys puffing clouds of smoke into the grey sky. The streets are lined with rows of narrow terraced houses, each with laundry fluttering in the breeze, each alive with the hum of workers returning home. Amidst this smoky backdrop, a wedding takes place, a moment of light carved out of daily toil. The church here is modest, its windows plain, its pews filled with neighbours dressed in their Sunday best. The bride's gown may not be satin, but muslin or cotton, carefully sewn by hand, with ribbons to catch the eye. The groom wears a suit brushed until it gleams, though the cuffs may be frayed if you look closely. There is pride in every detail, even if it is humble. The vows are spoken slowly, reverently, and then, just as the bride nods her assent, a sneeze bursts from one of the children sitting near the back. The sound ricochets in the small church, startling a few, amusing others. The child rubs at his nose, wide-eyed, as though he's disrupted the world. His mother hushes him, but the laughter is gentle, forgiving. In places where life is hard, small mishaps are softened with humour. The reception is held in a community hall, its walls decorated with paper garlands and sprigs of greenery. The long tables are filled with foods familiar to working families. There are meat puddings steamed in cloth, heavy and savoury, their suet crusts giving way to fillings of minced beef and onions. Imagine the steam rising as the pudding is cut, the scent filling the room with warmth and comfort. The taste is hearty, rich, not fancy but deeply satisfying. Food meant to fill the belly and steady the heart. Beside it are trays of potatoes, boiled until soft, glistening with pats of butter. There are bowls of pickled vegetables, beetroots, onions, gherkins, their sharpness cutting through the heaviness of the pudding. Bread loaves, thick and chewy, are torn into hunks and passed from hand to hand, crumbs scattering like little blessings across the tablecloth. And for sweetness, there are jam tarts, small round pastries filled with sticky fruit preserves. Raspberry, plum, sometimes gooseberry. The crusts are crumbly, the jam jewel bright, glistening under the hall's oil lamps. Children hover near the trays, sneaking extra tarts when they think no one is watching. Have you ever tasted something so simple it feels like home, yet so sweet it sparks joy like a firework in the mind? That was the Victorian jam tart. As the guests eat, the sounds of the industrial town linger faintly beyond the hall. The rumble of trains in the distance, the hiss of steam, the low thrum of machines winding down for the night. Yet inside, laughter and song drown them out. A fiddler plays, his bow moving briskly, while others join in with clapping hands and stamping feet. The hall becomes alive, filled with music that outshines the grey world outside. Sneezes continue to punctuate the evening, whether from coal dust clinging to coats or from the strong scents of pickled onions. Each sneeze is met with a bless you, and often followed by laughter. Here, no one frets about omens or etiquette. Life itself is too demanding to waste energy on superstition. A sneeze is simply part of being alive, a reminder that the body speaks even when we'd prefer silence. As the evening draws to a close, the tables are messy with crumbs and spills, the air warm and smoky from oil lamps. Guests lean back in their chairs, full and content, voices lowering as the hour grows late. Outside, the lamps along the streets glow faintly, their light hazy in the smoke. You step into the cool air, the factory chimneys silhouetted against the night sky. The noise of the day is gone now, replaced by stillness, broken only by the occasional bark of a dog or the whistle of a faraway train. And as you walk through the narrow streets, past shuttered houses and dimly glowing windows, you carry with you the comfort of shared bread, sweet jam tarts, and the laughter that followed each sneeze. Even in the humblest corners, weddings shone like lanterns, brief moments of warmth in the long grey evenings of the Victorian age. Now, let your mind wander onward, to the next chapter, where another setting, another wedding, and another small, sleepy curiosity awaits. Imagine now a wedding not in the bustling cities or quiet countryside, but in a genteel manor house tucked behind rolling lawns and trimmed hedges. The house itself is grand, its windows tall, its staircase sweeping, its chandeliers glimmering with hundreds of candles reflected in crystal drops. The air smells faintly of beeswax and polished wood, the sort of scent that suggests both wealth and meticulous housekeeping. The ceremony is held in the drawing room, a harpist plucking gentle notes in the corner, while the couple exchange vows before the assembled guests. Ladies in silk gowns fan themselves lightly, and gentlemen shift in their stiff collars, the rustle of fabric the only sound. And then, cutting through the softness, a sneeze erupts from the bride's father. It is a deep, thunderous sneeze, one that rattles the glasses and earns a chorus of polite chuckles. His cheeks redden, but the bride smiles kindly, squeezing his arm as though to say, "You are forgiven." Among the upper classes, etiquette ruled every moment. A sneeze was meant to be muffled, discreet, handled with a monogrammed handkerchief. But in truth, the human body rarely cares for etiquette, and so even in the finest rooms sneezes intruded. Some might whisper that it was a sign of nerves, others that it was simply the dust of old draperies. Either way, it softened the grandeur of the moment, reminding everyone that even stately fathers were still only human. The reception begins in the great dining hall, a long table stretching the length of the room. At its centre stands the bride's cake, a towering fruit cake covered in royal icing, adorned with sugar flowers and even little cupids sculpted in almond paste. Guests admire it as though it were a sculpture, though when the knife cuts through, it proves dense, sticky with dried fruit, the sort of cake that could last weeks without spoiling. Have you ever eaten something so heavy you wondered if it could double as a doorstop? That was the Victorian wedding cake in its most splendid form. Around the cake, other delicacies await. Syllabubs whipped light and frothy, trifles layered with custard, sponge and sherry, and delicate pastries filled with almond paste. The flavours are rich, each bite a little indulgence designed to impress. And beside these sweets, platters of roasted pheasant and cold game pies offer something savoury to balance the sugar. Imagine lifting a slice of pheasant pie, the pastry crisp, the meat earthy, the gravy thick and clinging. It is food both elaborate and comforting, meant to feed not just the stomach but the sense of spectacle. Glasses of champagne are raised, the bubbles catching the candlelight. For many guests, champagne is still a novelty, its fizz tickling the tongue, its sharpness bright against the richness of the food. Toasts are offered in turn, to the bride, to the groom, to the families, to absent friends. Each toast is met with clinks of crystal and murmurs of approval, and yes, sometimes interrupted again by a sneeze, muffled behind lace or linen, each one followed by quiet laughter. Music begins once more, not the rustic fiddles of the countryside, but a string quartet. Their notes sweep elegantly through the hall, guiding couples into waltzes that glide across the polished floor. Dresses swirl, shoes whisper against wood, and the room becomes a living painting. You watch as the bride and groom join in, their steps careful at first, then flowing more easily, laughter bubbling between them like champagne. As the evening wears on, the chandeliers burn lower, their wax dripping onto brass holders. The air grows warmer, filled with the mingled scents of food, perfume, and flowers. Servants move quietly between guests, refilling glasses, clearing plates, their motions practiced and nearly invisible. Yet even in such refinement, small human interruptions remain. Another sneeze here, a dropped fork there, a child's giggle breaking through the hush. These moments, though unpolished, are what truly stitch the memory together. Finally, as the night ends, guests step into carriages waiting at the drive. The lamps glow against the gravel, horses snort in the cool night air, and the manor fades into shadow as each carriage rolls away. You linger a moment, breathing in the faint scent of lilacs drifting from the garden, your thoughts softened by food, music, and laughter. And as you turn down the lane, the sneeze of the bride's father lingers in your mind, not as a flaw in the day, but as the perfect touch of humanness in a celebration otherwise gilded in grandeur. Now, let your imagination drift further, to the next wedding, where new scents, sounds, and small curiosities await us in Victorian time. Now picture a wedding far from the manor or the city, held instead on the grounds of a sprawling garden estate. The season is late spring, the hedges neatly trimmed, the flower beds bursting with tulips, violets, and roses. The air itself feels lighter here, scented with blossoms and touched by the soft hum of bees. White canvas tents are raised across the lawn, their sides billowing gently with the breeze, while rows of wooden chairs are set beneath blossoming trees. The ceremony takes place outdoors, under an arch woven with ivy and white roses. The bride wears a gown that catches the sunlight like fresh snow, while the groom fidgets nervously with his gloves. Guests fan themselves with folded programs, the paper fluttering softly like wings. Then, just as the officiant lifts his voice, a sneeze bursts forth. Not from the couple or their families this time, but from you, the guest seated in the second row. The flower's heady fragrance has caught your nose, and before you can stifle it, the sound escapes, sharp and unavoidable. The reaction? A pause, then a ripple of laughter. Outdoors, sneezes seem less intrusive, softened by birdsong and breezes. Someone nearby murmurs, "The roses are strong this year," as if excusing you on nature's behalf. And the vows continue, undisturbed. Afterwards, the guests spill onto the lawns for a reception beneath the tents. Long tables are covered in crisp white cloths, gleaming with glassware and silver. Platters of cucumber sandwiches arrive first, delicate slices layered with butter and thin ribbons of cucumber, their coolness refreshing against the warmth of the day. The bread is soft, nearly weightless, disappearing almost as soon as it touches the tongue. Isn't it curious how something so plain can feel so elegant when served in triangles? There are aspics too, those shimmering creations of savoury jelly, moulded with slices of vegetables suspended within. Bright peas, orange carrots, even hard-boiled eggs float like curiosities in amber glass. Guests prod them politely with forks, their wobble almost hypnotic. The Victorians adored aspics, though to our taste they might seem more curious than comforting, like eating a cold soup that's forgotten how to be liquid. For sweets, bowls of strawberries and cream are passed around, the berries red and fragrant, the cream thick enough to cling to the spoon. Sugar is sprinkled generously, sparking against the tartness of the fruit. Imagine biting into one. First the burst of sweetness, then the cooling richness of cream. A perfect springtime indulgence. Glasses of sparkling lemonade circulate, bubbles catching the light. Some guests add a splash of wine, turning it into a gentle punch. The clink of glasses mingles with the chirp of blackbirds, the whole afternoon carrying a music of its own. And then another sneeze. This time from a child who has buried his face too deeply into a bouquet of lilacs. The sneeze is so small, so sudden, that it sends nearby adults into chuckles. "Bless you," someone says, and the child grins, proud rather than embarrassed. As the sun dips lower, the air cools slightly, and lanterns are lit among the trees. They sway gently, glowing like fireflies. Music begins, flutes and violins weaving together a soft tune that floats across the lawn. Couples step onto the grass to dance, skirts brushing against dew-silvered blades. The atmosphere is dreamlike, as though the entire world has been softened into candlelight and laughter. And you, sitting back with a glass of lemonade, watch as the day settles into evening. The roses still scent the air, though now gentler, calmer. Your sneeze from earlier feels long forgotten, folded into the fabric of a day that will be remembered not for interruptions, but for joy. At last, as the stars appear one by one above the tents, you stand and walk slowly through the garden paths. Gravel crunches softly beneath your shoes, the night air cool and still. You pause beneath a tree heavy with blossoms, breathing in its perfume, your mind drifting into quietness. And as you step beyond the garden gates, the music fading behind you, you carry with you the softness of strawberries, the shimmer of aspics, and the small human comfort of laughter after a sneeze. Now let your thoughts drift gently forward, toward yet another wedding, another table, another whisper of history waiting in the calm night. Now let us step into a Victorian wedding held aboard a riverboat. Imagine the Thames flowing wide and slow beneath the wooden deck, its surface catching shards of sunlight like scattered coins. The boat is decorated with garlands of ivy and white ribbons, its polished brass railings gleaming as though scrubbed just for the occasion. Guests step carefully across the planks, their voices mingling with the lap of water against the hull. The ceremony takes place on the open deck, beneath a striped awning fluttering gently in the breeze. The officiant's words float out over the river, carried softly by the wind. The bride clutches her bouquet tightly, the groom stands tall, and everyone leans forward to catch each word. And then, just as silence deepens for the vows, a sneeze bursts from one of the groomsmen. It echoes oddly across the water, startling a few ducks that take off with flapping wings. The guests laugh quietly, their amusement softened by the sound of rippling waves. Victorians loved the novelty of boat weddings. It was modern, daring even, a sign that technology and tradition could blend. Yet sneezers cared nothing for novelty. Some whispered that sneezing over water meant the couple would travel far in their marriage, while others smiled knowingly, as though the river itself had nudged the sneeze into being. The reception follows immediately, tables set with crisp cloths, though they sway ever so slightly with the boat's motion. Platters of cold salmon appear first, pink and glistening, garnished with sprigs of parsley and slices of lemon. Imagine lifting a forkful, the flesh tender and cool, the lemon adding a spark of brightness. The taste is clean, simple, almost like breathing in the river itself. Beside it are cucumber salads dressed in vinegar, sharp and refreshing, a counterpoint to the richness of the fish. Bread rolls are served warm, their crusts crackling as guests tear them open, steam curling out into the air. A pat of butter melts instantly, soaking into the crumb like sunlight into clouds. For sweetness there are blancmanges, delicate moulded puddings of milk thickened until they quiver like jelly. Some are flavoured with almonds, others with rosewater, their pale surfaces glistening under the lanterns. The taste is light, almost ethereal, like eating a memory of milk. Guests murmur their delight, spoons tapping faintly against porcelain bowls. And of course, glasses of champagne sparkle, though the boat's motion makes them tremble dangerously. Toasts are given with care, laughter rising and falling with the current. Every now and then, another sneeze punctuates the air, perhaps stirred by river breezes carrying pollen or by the perfume of flowers strung along the rails. Each sneeze is met with bless you, laughter, and another round of raised glasses. As the afternoon wanes, the riverboat glides past willows that trail their fingers in the water. Music begins, a flute, a violin, soft, lilting, drifting across the deck like the breeze. Couples sway gently in time, their steps small so as not to upset their balance. The boat rocks slightly, the music mingles with the splash of water, and the whole scene feels as though it belongs to a dream. Later, lanterns are lit, their reflections dancing on the surface of the river. The sky blushes pink, then deepens into violet, stars pricking through the twilight. The guests grow quieter, voices lowered, eyes drawn to the glow of the horizon. Somewhere in the hush, a sneeze erupts again, followed by laughter, followed by silence. By now, sneezes are no longer interruptions. They are simply part of the rhythm, like waves against wood, like wind in sails. And when the boat finally docks, you step onto the shore with unsteady legs, as though still swaying with the current. The night air is cool, smelling faintly of river and damp earth. Behind you, the lantern-lit boat drifts into shadow, carrying with it the laughter, the sneezes, the music of the evening. And as you walk down the bank, your thoughts float gently, like the river itself, onward to the next curiosity in the quiet world of Victorian weddings. This time, let us wander north to a Victorian wedding held in the Lake District. Imagine rolling hills reflected in still waters, their slopes dotted with sheep and framed by stone cottages. The air is damp but fresh, carrying the scent of moss and rain-soaked earth. The little parish church sits at the edge of the lake, its bell chiming slowly, its door open to welcome neighbours who have walked muddy paths to attend the celebration. Inside, the walls are plain, the windows tall and narrow, and the pews smell faintly of polish and pine. The couple stand before the altar, their voices soft, their vows echoing lightly in the hush. Then, just as the silence deepens for the final words, a sneeze breaks free. This time, it comes from the bride's younger brother, sitting nervously with his hands folded. The sneeze bounces off the stone walls, startling a few sparrows from the rafters. The congregation smiles warmly, and the minister pauses only a heartbeat before continuing, as though even the bird's wings were part of the blessing. Afterward, the guests step out into a drizzle, umbrellas sprouting like mushrooms across the churchyard. They walk together to a nearby inn, its hearths blazing, its windows steamed from within. The reception begins in the snug warmth of wood-panelled rooms, the tables crowded with platters of local fare. First, there are Cumberland sausages, long coiled spirals of pork and spice, their skins crackling, their flavour rich and peppery. Imagine cutting into one, the juices sizzling, the taste smoky yet comforting. Alongside them are bowls of buttered peas, their green brightness cutting the richness of the meat. There are meat pies too, thick-crusted, filled with beef and onions steaming as they're sliced. The smell fills the room, hearty and grounding, the kind of scent that clings to wool coats and lingers long after the plates are cleared. For bread, there are oat cakes, rough and nutty, served with wedges of crumbly local cheese. Guests spread butter across the oat cakes, laughing as the crumbs scatter like tiny confetti across the table. And for dessert, a local treasure, Westmoreland pepper cake, dark with treacle and spiced with ginger, nutmeg, and even a hint of black pepper. It warms the mouth with every bite. Have you ever tasted something sweet that carries just enough spice to surprise you? That was the charm of pepper cake, comfort wrapped in a little mischief. Tankards of ale and mugs of mulled cider make the rounds, their warmth seeping into chilled hands. Glasses clink, voices rise, and the room hums with cheer. And yes, another sneeze comes. Perhaps from the sudden heat of the hearth after the damp walk, perhaps from the pepper in the cake. Each sneeze is met with laughter, a chorus of "bless you," echoing as though it were part of the evening song. Music follows, fiddles and pipes joining in reels that make boots stamp and skirts twirl. The floor shakes with the rhythm, the air filled with shouts and laughter. Children dart between dancers, their cheeks flushed, their eyes bright with mischief. The warmth of the fire, the richness of the food, the spice of the cake, it all blends into a haze of comfort. Later, when the music slows and candles burn low, the inn grows quiet. Guests sit back in their chairs, drowsy from food and drink, their laughter softened to murmurs. Outside, the rain has eased, leaving the night still, the lake reflecting faint moonlight like silver glass. You step out into the cool air, the scent of wet earth fresh and grounding. The sound of distant sheep drifts across the hills, and the inn's windows glow warmly behind you. The sneeze from earlier lingers only as a memory, one more thread in a tapestry woven from rain, firelight, and laughter. And as you walk toward the lake's edge, your thoughts soften, drifting as smoothly as the water, ready to carry you into the next chapter of Victorian life. Now picture a wedding in the heart of Victorian London, not among the wealthy, but within a bustling working-class neighbourhood. The narrow lanes are alive with noise, cartwheels clattering over cobblestones, hawkers calling their wares, children darting between market stalls. Yet amid all the daily hustle, today there is joy, for a wedding draws the whole street together. The ceremony is held in a small parish church tucked between rows of brick houses. Inside, the air smells faintly of damp stone and candle wax. The pews are crowded, hats brushing shoulders, children perched restlessly on laps. The vows are spoken quickly, almost briskly, as though aware of the day's busy rhythm. And then a sneeze erupts from the bridegroom himself. It comes at the most dramatic moment, right as he says, "I will." The sound booms, echoing against the high ceiling. For a heartbeat, silence holds, then laughter spills out like a kettle boiling over. The bride giggles, the guests chuckle, and the officiant smiles kindly before repeating the vow. In a city where life is often hard, a sneeze during the vows is no scandal. Some whisper it's a sign of honesty. The body's way of proving the words come from the heart. Others joke that it's a warning. Married life comes with sneezes and much else besides. Either way, it becomes the moment everyone remembers. The reception is held not in a grand hall, but in the upper room of a local tavern. The wooden floors creak, the windows fog with warmth, and the smell of beer and roasting meat fills the air. Long tables are pushed together, covered with mismatched cloths. Plates of food arrive one after another, simple but filling. There are steak and kidney pies, their crusts golden and flaky, their fillings rich with gravy. Imagine cutting into one, steam curling upward, the savoury scent enveloping you. There are jellied eels too, a London favourite, slippery, cool and oddly briny, wobbling in their jelly. Some guests eat them eagerly, others politely push them aside. Loaves of bread are passed around, crusty and warm, perfect for soaking up gravy. And for sweets there are treacle sponges, dark and sticky, served with custard poured thick and steaming. The sweetness clings to your tongue, as though determined to be remembered. Have you ever tasted something so rich it felt like both dessert and memory combined? That is treacle pudding. Beer flows freely, pints clink together in hearty toasts. The air is filled with laughter, shouts and bursts of song. Someone brings out a concertina, and soon the tavern hums with music. Couples attempt a quick step across the cramped floor, skirts brushing against chairs, boots thudding on the boards. Children clap in rhythm, their cheeks sticky with custard. And then, yes, another sneeze. Perhaps from the pipe smoke curling in the air, or from the peppery pies. The sound draws a round of cheers. By now, sneezes have become part of the celebration itself, like toasts or songs, woven naturally into the fabric of the evening. As the night wears on, the tavern grows warm and noisy, then slowly begins to quiet as guests drift away. The candles burn low, dripping wax onto wooden holders. The air smells of ash, beer, and sweet treacle. You step outside into the London night, the cobblestones glistening faintly with drizzle. Gas lamps glow, casting halos of light in the mist, while distant carriage wheels clatter into the dark. You walk slowly, the sound of laughter still echoing behind you. And though the bridegroom's sneeze may have seemed awkward in the moment, now it feels like the very heart of the day, ordinary, human, and utterly unforgettable. And so, with that warm thought, let your mind wander forward, toward the next wedding, the next story, the next little curiosity hidden in the Victorian world. This time, let us drift toward the English coast again, but not the bustling Brighton of fashion. Instead, picture a small fishing village in the late Victorian years. The cottages are low and whitewashed, their roofs of slate glistening with sea mist. Nets hang drying across fences, boats rock lazily in the harbour, and the air smells faintly of salt and tar. A wedding here is no grand affair, but the entire village gathers, for such day is rare and cherished. The church is tiny, its wooden pews worn smooth by generations. Bouquets of wildflowers decorate the windowsills, daisies, buttercups, and sprigs of rosemary tied with simple ribbons. The bride's gown may be plain muslin, hem lifted to avoid damp stones, while the groom wears his best fisherman's coat brushed as neat as possible. The vows are spoken quietly, almost shyly, their words folding into the hush of waves crashing faintly in the distance. And then, as silence holds, a sneeze escapes, this time from a fisherman guest, his nose reddened from years of salt air. The sneeze echoes sharp in the small space, startling a baby into a squeak, and the whole room breaks into chuckles. Someone whispers that sneezing at sea was thought to keep storms away, so perhaps sneezing at a wedding by the sea promises fair weather in marriage. The bride smiles, reassured, as though the ocean itself had blessed her union. The reception is held in a boathouse, its beams heavy with ropes, its windows flung wide to let in the salt breeze. Long tables are set with platters of fish fresh from the morning's catch. There is smoked herring, its skin silvered and curling, its taste salty and strong. There are bowls of cockles and mussels, boiled until tender, sprinkled with parsley, their brine sharp but comforting. Have you ever eaten something that felt like the sea itself captured in a spoonful? That is what the Victorians savoured here. Bread loaves are passed around, thick and chewy, perfect for soaking up broth. Butter, churned fresh that morning, is spread generously, melting into the warm slices. Children run about with sticky fingers, chasing one another between barrels and nets. The air hums with laughter and the sound of fiddles, for no wedding in such a village would be complete without dancing. Sweets arrive too, though simpler than the cakes of grand houses. There are ginger biscuits, crisp, spicy, warming, and small currant buns, their tops glazed with sugar so they gleam like little treasures. Guests nibble them with cups of strong tea, the steam fogging the cool boathouse windows. A sneeze bursts again, this time from a child dusted in flour from stolen buns, and laughter erupts, even louder than before. The fiddler plays faster, stamping his foot, and soon couples spin across the floor, skirts swishing, boots clattering. The rhythm is quick and joyful, almost like waves chasing each other to shore. You watch as the bride and groom join in, their smiles wide, their movements light. The sneeze from earlier is forgotten, or rather, remembered with warmth, as if it belongs to the music, another beat in the tune of the day. As evening falls, lanterns are lit, their glow spilling across the harbour. Outside, the tide rolls in, hushing against the stones, the air cool and damp. Guests drift home, their laughter carrying faintly over the water, while the boathouse grows quiet, only the ropes creaking softly in the night breeze. You step outside, the salt sting fresh in your lungs. The moon casts a pale path across the sea, and for a moment the world feels both vast and gentle. The sneeze that seemed sharp in the church now feels like a blessing folded into the day's memory, carried away on the tide. And as you walk slowly along the shore, your thoughts soften, blending with the rhythm of waves, preparing you to drift towards yet another tale of Victorian weddings. Imagine now a Victorian wedding in the countryside of Wales. The hills roll endlessly, green and misty, dotted with sheep whose bells tinkle faintly in the distance. Stone cottages cluster together, their chimneys puffing white smoke into the cool air. The church is small, built of grey stone with ivy climbing its walls and a bell that tolls in a deep, steady rhythm. Inside, the ceremony feels almost like a gathering of family rather than formality. The voices rise in Welsh hymns, slow and resonant, filling the little nave with harmonies that seem to come from the stones themselves. The couple stand before the altar, the bride clutching a bouquet of myrtle and lavender. All is hushed, reverent, until, as if on cue, a sneeze bursts forth from the groom himself. The sound echoes in the tiny space, and the congregation ripples with smiles. Some whisper that a groom sneezing on his vows is a sign of truth, that no falsehood can pass through a sneeze. Others chuckle that he has simply caught a chill from the damp mist outside. Either way, the moment lightens the solemnity, drawing warmth into the room like a sudden beam of sun through the clouds. After the vows, guests walk together to the reception in a farmhouse nearby. The kitchen hearth roars with fire, the beams hung with drying herbs, and long tables are laid with platters of food. There are coal bowls, hearty Welsh broth made with lamb, leeks and root vegetables. The steam rises thick and fragrant, filling the air with comfort. Imagine dipping your spoon into the broth. The taste savoury and simple, warming you all the way down. Alongside it are fresh loaves of bara brith, speckled bread sweetened with dried fruit and spices, sliced thick and served with butter. The texture is dense, the sweetness gentle, the butter melting instantly into its crumb. Cheeses from local dairies are set out too, crumbly carefully in soft, sharp farmhouse wheels. Guests eat them with oat cakes, the rough texture pairing perfectly with the creamy tang. Cups of tea are poured endlessly, their steam fogging the farmhouse windows, while mugs of ale are lifted in toasts that grow merrier with each round. For sweets there are Welsh cakes, little griddled rounds dusted with sugar, their centres warm with currants and spice. Bite into one and it is soft, tender, just sweet enough to linger. Have you ever tasted something that feels both like a treat and like comfort itself? That is the Welsh cake, simple, honest, and deeply satisfying. Music follows, of course. A harp is brought into the farmhouse, its strings shimmering in the firelight. Fingers pluck gentle melodies, weaving through the air like silver threads. Some guests hum along, others tap their feet, and children dance in corners, their cheeks flushed pink. And every so often, another sneeze cuts through, perhaps from the smoke of the hearth or the dust of the old farmhouse beams. Each sneeze is met with bendith arnat ti, a blessing upon you. The Welsh language rolls softly, warmly, wrapping even a sneeze in poetry. As the evening draws to a close, the farmhouse grows quieter. Plates are empty, crumbs scattered, mugs drained. The harp's notes grow slower, fading like the last embers in the hearth. Outside, the hills are cloaked in mist, the air damp and still. You step outside, breathing in the fresh night air. The sheep bells tinkle faintly, the moon shines weakly through cloud, and the farmhouse glows warm behind you. The groom's sneeze has already become a story, something to laugh over tomorrow, something to weave into the fabric of memory. And as you walk down the misty lane, your thoughts soften, blending into the quiet hills, carrying you onward to the next wedding, the next tale, the next sleepy corner of the Victorian age. This time, let us journey east, to a Victorian wedding in a small Norfolk village, not far from the marshes where reeds sway and the calls of waterfowl echo across the still air. The church sits on slightly raised ground, its spire slender, its stones weathered pale by salt winds. The path is lined with wildflowers, cowslips and primroses gathered by children, their petals already beginning to wilt in small fists. Inside, the air is cool and faintly damp, the scent of stone and hymn books mingling with the fragrance of flowers tucked along the pews. The vows are spoken slowly, the silence deep and reverent, until, of course, a sneeze shatters the calm. This time, it comes from the bride's little nephew, whose nose has been twitching since he buried his face in the primroses. The sneeze echoes comically, bouncing against the walls. Laughter ripples, restrained but warm, and the officiant himself chuckles before continuing. Here in Norfolk, people sometimes said that a sneeze during a wedding meant the couple's life together would never be dull, that their marriage would be lively, full of surprises. The thought seems to please the guests, who exchange knowing smiles as the vows are sealed. The reception is held in a village barn, its beams festooned with ribbons and greenery. Tables groan under the weight of food, both hearty and homely. Platters of Norfolk dumplings arrive first, large, soft rounds of dough boiled until fluffy, served with rich beef stews. Imagine breaking one open, the steam curling upward, the taste plain yet comforting, soaking in the gravy until it becomes a sponge of flavour. There are also smoked eels, a delicacy of the marshes, their flesh tender and lightly oily, paired with dark rye bread. The flavour is unusual, salty, smoky, lingering like the scent of peat fires. Some guests eat them eagerly, others wrinkle their noses, but none deny it is a true taste of the place. For sweets there are treacle tarts, their golden crusts filled with sticky syrup, each slice sweet enough to make the lips hum. Alongside them sit plates of shortbread, buttery and crumbly, disappearing almost instantly on the tongue. Children snatch them greedily, their fingers dusted with sugar, their laughter carrying over the sound of fiddles beginning to play. Yes, music fills the barn quickly, fiddles, flutes, and even a drum made from a barrel, struck with cheerful rhythm. The floor shakes with dancing as boots stamp and skirts twirl, the air warm with bodies and firelight. Each sneeze, whether from the dust of straw underfoot or the strong smell of treacle, is met with cheers and good-natured blessings. Here, sneezes are not disruptions, but moments folded easily into merriment, as natural as clapping or laughter. As the night wears on, the barn glows golden with lanterns. The smell of stew and sweet tarts lingers in the air, the music softens to gentler tunes, and guests begin to drift out into the marshy night. The air is cool, damp with mist, and the calls of owls echo faintly across the fields. You step outside, the barn's light spilling faintly behind you, your breath rising in little clouds. The sneeze of the nephew lingers in your mind, not as a disruption but as a charm, as though it had opened a window, letting in humour, humanness and warmth. And as you walk along the reed-lined path, the moon low above the marshes, your thoughts grow quiet, drifting softly toward the next chapter in this winding journey through Victorian weddings. Now let us travel to the Scottish lowlands, where rolling fields stretch wide beneath a sky that shifts quickly from blue to grey. Here, in a market town, a Victorian wedding takes place in the town kirk, its steeple tall, its bells ringing with a heavy, solemn note. The cobbled streets are damp from the morning shower, and the air smells of wet stone and the faint tang of coal smoke drifting from chimneys. Inside the kirk, candles glow faintly in iron sconces. The guests shuffle into their seats, coats steaming slightly as they dry in the warm air. The minister begins, his voice low and steady, filling the space like a river flowing slowly but firmly. The bride stands quiet, her veil trimmed with lace, the groom shifting on his feet, and then, just as silence falls, a sneeze bursts out. Not from a guest, but from the bride herself. It is delicate but undeniable, a quick flutter that startles the congregation into smiles. The groom looks at her with concern, but she waves him off with a small laugh. In lowland tradition, some whispered that a bride's sneeze meant luck, that her body had chosen to send away ill omens at the very moment of her vows. Others chuckled that it was only the dust of the kirk, but still the thought lingered, and the moment softened the room. The reception follows in a town hall, its wooden floor polished, its rafters strung with garlands of evergreen. Long tables are arranged with a mixture of local delicacies and festive staples. There are bridies, Scottish meat pastries filled with minced beef and onions, their crusts flaky and golden. Imagine biting into one, the filling savoury and peppery, warm enough to make you sigh with comfort. Bowls of tatty soup appear too, potato, leek and butter blended into a thick creamy warmth that feels like a blanket for the stomach. The steam curls gently upward, carrying the earthy scent of vegetables and herbs. Thick slices of bannocks are passed around, flatbreads, dense and chewy, spread with fresh butter or honey. For sweetness there are Dundee cakes, golden rounds studded with almonds and candied peel. The flavour is bright, citrusy, not as heavy as fruit cake, but still rich enough to linger on the tongue. Alongside them are tablet sweets, squares of sugar and butter boiled to grainy perfection, melting almost instantly in the mouth. Children dart eagerly for them, cheeks bulging, their giggles echoing in the rafters. Music begins with fiddles and pipes, and soon reels sweep across the hall. The stamping of feet, the swirl of tartan skirts, the clapping of hands, it all rises in rhythm, the hall itself trembling with joy. Every now and then sneezes still erupt, perhaps from the smoke of lanterns, perhaps from the pepper in the bridies. Each one is greeted with cheers and blessings, folded naturally into the current of sound. As the night deepens, whiskey is poured into small glasses. Its golden fire warms throats and loosens voices, and toasts grow more playful, more heartfelt. The bride sneezes again, sending a ripple of laughter through the hall. "Twice the blessing!" someone calls, and the music swells louder, as if in agreement. Later, as candles burn low and the hall grows quiet, the air is filled with the mingled scents of pastry, soup, and wood smoke. Guests step out into the cool lowland night, their breath rising in little clouds, their laughter lingering softly behind them. The streets glisten faintly under the gas lamps, and the kirk bells toll once more, low and steady. You walk slowly down the cobbles, the sound of fiddles still humming in your mind. The bride's sneeze, rather than a disruption, feels like a charm now, a reminder that even the grandest moments are softened by small human slips. And as you turn toward the quiet inn where you'll rest, your thoughts float gently onward, ready for the next wedding tale waiting in Victorian time. Now imagine a Victorian wedding held not in a church or hall, but in the glassy wonder of a conservatory. The late 19th century was an age of fascination with glasshouses, where exotic plants thrived under panes that glistened with dew. This couple, eager to show modern taste, has chosen such a place for their vows. The conservatory is filled with palm fronds and orchids, their scents mingling with the damp earthiness of soil. Sunlight filters through the glass roof, casting a dappled glow across polished tiles. Guests fan themselves with programs, for the air is heavy and warm, fragrant and strange, like stepping into a small jungle. The vows are spoken beneath an arch of ferns, the minister's voice echoing slightly against glass. Then, suddenly, the groom's best man sneezes. The sound startles a flock of small birds kept in a nearby aviary, their wings flapping in a rush of feathers. For a moment, laughter bubbles up like a fountain, the tension of solemnity eased by the absurdity. Someone whispers that sneezing among greenery means the marriage will grow strong, as plants do after a spring shower. The thought settles warmly into the guests' minds. After the ceremony, tables are set among the plants, their cloths bright against the greenery. Platters of cold roast beef are served, thin slices arranged neatly beside pickles and mustard. Imagine lifting a forkful, the beef tender, the mustard sharp, the pickles snapping brightly on the tongue. Beside them are salads of lettuce and cucumber lightly dressed, cool against the heat of the room. There are jellies shaped like domes and castles, their surfaces trembling in the sunlight. Some are flavoured with lemon, others with sherry, each spoonful cool and quivering. Guests laugh as they wobble, children clapping as the jelly shakes on its dish. For sweets, there are pineapple puddings, a true exotic luxury. Pineapples were rare and expensive, their presence a mark of fashion and wealth. The pudding is sweet, golden, and bright with juice, served in slices that seem almost too fine to eat. Have you ever tasted something so sharp and sweet it feels like sunshine captured on the tongue? That was the Victorian pineapple, half fruit, half status symbol. Glasses of sparkling punch are passed around, cool and fizzy, the citrus brightening the heavy air. Some guests sip slowly, others laugh at the tickle of bubbles. The conservatory hums with chatter, softened by the rustle of leaves. And yes, sneezes still interrupt, perhaps from the pollen, perhaps from the damp air. Each one is met with chuckles, as though the plants themselves were teasing the guests. Music begins softly, a string trio tucked near a fountain. Their notes mingle with the trickle of water and the rustle of palm fronds. Couples dance slowly, their steps careful on the tiled floor, their laughter gentle in the green shadows. As the evening comes, the conservatory grows cooler, the glass misting faintly as night falls outside. Lanterns are lit, their glow reflected in the panes, turning the room into a golden greenhouse of warmth. The air is still heavy with the scents of earth, orchids, and pineapple, but softer now, calming. You step outside at last, the night air crisp against your face after the greenhouse warmth. The stars glimmer above, and the glass house gleams faintly behind you, filled with light and laughter. The sneeze of the best man is already becoming part of the tale. One more human note among the exotic leaves and sweet puddings. And as you walk slowly down the lantern-lit path, your thoughts drift like petals on water, carrying you toward the next quiet story in the Victorian age. Picture now a Victorian wedding set not in a bustling town, but on the quiet edge of the English Lake District. The day is cool, the sky pale grey, and the mountains loom in gentle shades of green and slate. A small stone church rests near a lake, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the clouds above. Sheep graze nearby, and the faint clatter of their bells drifts on the breeze. Inside the church, the guests settle onto wooden pews, their coats smelling faintly of rain and wool. Candles flicker softly, their light dancing on the carved stone arches. The minister begins the vows, his voice steady, and just as the room falls into solemn silence, a sneeze bursts forth from an elderly uncle in the back. It is a sneeze so strong it startles even the birds roosting in the rafters, sending them fluttering into the air. The congregation chuckles, the bride hides her smile behind her bouquet, and the groom shakes his head fondly. In local law, some say a sneeze at a wedding is a sign that ancestors are blessing the union. Others joke it is simply a sign of too much pipe smoke lingering in his coat. Either way, the sneeze becomes a thread in the tapestry of the day. The reception is held at an inn by the lakeshore, its windows fogged with warmth from a roaring fire. Tables are laid with dishes hearty and suited to the cool air. There are Cumberland sausages, long and coiled, spiced with pepper and nutmeg, their aroma filling the room. Imagine cutting into one, the skin snapping slightly, the flavour rich and savoury, warming you instantly. Beside them are bowls of buttered potatoes, steaming and golden, sprinkled with parsley. Platters of oatcakes are passed around, their rough texture softened with fresh butter or crumbly cheese. For those with sweet tooths, there is sticky toffee pudding, dark sponge soaked with syrup, served with thick cream that melts slowly into each slice. The flavour clings to the tongue, comforting and indulgent, like a hug in food form. Allah flows freely, poured into mugs that clink with every toast. Some sip cider, its sharpness refreshing after heavy sausage. Children sip ginger beer, its fizz tickling their noses, laughter bubbling up with every gulp. Music begins with a fiddler by the fire, his bow dancing lightly across the strings. Soon feet tap and hands clap, and the room thrums with reels and folk songs. Outside, the lake lies still, the night air cool and crisp, but inside the inn glows with warmth, chatter, and song. Every so often another sneeze breaks out, whether from the smoke of the fire, the spice of the sausages, or the dust stirred by dancing boots. Each sneeze draws laughter, blessings, and a fresh round of mugs raised high. It seems no one minds. The sneezes only stitch more humanity into the fabric of the night. As the fire burns lower, shadows dance across the timbered walls. The scent of toffee and smoke lingers, the fiddler's tune slows, and conversations soften into murmurs. Guests step outside one by one, their breath clouding the air, their reflections shimmering faintly in the still water of the lake. You follow them out, standing by the shore. The mountains loom dark against the starlit sky, their presence steady and calm. The lake ripples faintly, carrying the echoes of music and laughter across its surface. The uncle's sneeze already feels like legend, an interruption turned into a blessing. And as you walk along the water's edge, the cool breeze on your face, your mind drifts gently, as though rocked on the lake itself, carrying you onward to the next quiet story of Victorian times. This time, let us step into a Victorian wedding held in the bustling heart of London. The city hums with carriages rattling over cobblestones, lamplighters making their rounds, and vendors calling out from the streets. Yet inside a grand townhouse, draped in velvet and polished with brass, the world grows smaller, quieter, and more intimate. The drawing room is transformed into a chapel of sorts. Heavy curtains block the city's noise, and the scent of roses fills the air. Guests perch on gilt chairs, their whispers hushed as the officiant raises his book. The bride, her gown, crisp white silk, glows in the candlelight, while the groom fidgets nervously with his gloves. And then it happens, a sneeze, sudden and sharp from a guest in the front row. The sound reverberates against the high ceiling, startling a servant carrying a tray of candles. One wobbles dangerously, almost dripping wax on the carpet, and a ripple of gasps runs through the room before laughter follows. A sneeze to shake the dust of the old century, someone murmurs, and the tension breaks. Smiles spread, even from the bride herself. After the vows, the townhouse opens its dining hall, long tables set with gleaming silver and crystal. The food is rich, befitting a London celebration. Platters of roast pheasant arrive first, their skin browned and crisp, garnished with sprigs of parsley. Imagine the crackle of the skin beneath a knife, the meat tender and gamey, paired with bread sauce smooth and mild. Bowls of turtle soup are served as well, a delicacy of the era, dark, savoury and seasoned with sherry. For those who find it too rich, there are lighter dishes, delicate cucumber sandwiches, cool and refreshing, their thin slices a whisper of flavour between soft bread. The sweet course is a triumph. Towering blancmange moulded into shapes of castles and crowns, trembling faintly as they are brought in. There are trifles layered with sponge, custard, jam and cream, each spoonful a blend of textures, soft, cool and sweet. Pineapple slices, expensive and admired, gleam golden on silver plates, a symbol of wealth and fashion. The sound of forks and conversation fills the hall, softened by the crackle of a large fireplace. Outside, the muffled rumble of carriages continues, but here the world seems wrapped in warmth and luxury. And yes, sneezes still punctuate the evening, from pepper in the soup or the dust of heavy draperies. Each sneeze draws polite laughter, small blessings, and one more excuse to raise a glass. After dinner, the guests drift into the music room, where a pianist begins to play a waltz. Couples move slowly across the polished floor, skirts swishing, jewels glinting in candlelight. The notes echo softly, mingling with the occasional clink of glass, the murmur of low conversation. As the evening winds down, the lamps are lowered and the rooms take on a golden hush. The air is scented with roses, wood smoke and faint perfume. Guests collect their cloaks, stepping back into the chill London night. The city greets them with the sound of hooves and the glow of gaslights, the townhouse fading into quiet behind them. You walk slowly down the street, your breath rising in the cool air. The sneeze from the ceremony lingers in memory, transformed into a story that will be retold with humour for years to come. In the grandness of the city, it is the small, human interruptions that make moments warm. And as the gas lamps flicker overhead, you let your mind wander, carried gently forward to the next tale waiting in the Victorian world. Now imagine a Victorian wedding far from the city, this one set in a seaside village along the southern coast of England. The sea air is cool, salted and steady, carrying the cries of gulls and the rhythmic wash of waves against the shore. The small parish church stands on a rise overlooking the water, its walls weathered by sea winds, its bell tolling softly to gather the villagers. Inside, the ceremony is simple, adorned only with wildflowers gathered from nearby fields. The minister speaks slowly, the sound of the surf faintly audible through the thick stone walls. The bride, cheeks flushed from the salt air, glances nervously at her groom. Just as vows are spoken, a sneeze escapes from one of the fishermen seated near the front. It echoes loudly in the small church, like a clap of thunder in the quiet. Laughter ripples gently among the guests, for here, sneezes are familiar companions. After all, who can stand against sea breezes and damp woolen coats? Someone whispers that a sneeze at the altar means the tide will favour the couple. The thought brings smiles, and the ceremony continues, the sneeze woven seamlessly into the story of the day. The reception takes place in a tavern by the harbour, its windows fogged with warmth from the kitchen. The tables are laden with seaside fare. There are platters of freshly caught herring, grilled until their skins crackle, the flavour smoky and briny. Bowls of mussels steamed in ale sit nearby, their shells clinking softly as guests help themselves. Imagine dipping bread into the broth, warm, savoury, touched with herbs, a taste both simple and rich. Fishermen bring in baskets of crabs and lobsters, boiled and cracked open, the sweetmeat dipped into melted butter. Children giggle as they try to manage the shells, their fingers slick with butter, their cheeks flushed with excitement. For those who prefer heartier fare, there are pies filled with mutton and vegetables, their crusts golden and flaky. The scent of pastry mingles with the sea air drifting in through an open door. And for dessert, treacle tart, sticky, golden and sweet, its syrupy filling clinging to the teeth in the most comforting way. Alongside it are plates of ginger biscuits, spiced and crisp, perfect with a sip of warm tea. Tankards of ale and cider are passed around, foamy and fragrant. The tavern hums with laughter and song, fiddles striking up a tune that grows faster with every round. The floor trembles under dancing boots, and the rafters echo with voices raised in chorus. And yes, sneezes continue to pepper the evening, caused by smoke from the hearth, the pepper in the pies, or simply the brisk air rushing in each time the tavern door swings open. But here, each sneeze is met with a cheer, a blessing, or even a toast. It becomes a kind of game, laughter bubbling up each time someone sneezes as though the sea itself had joined the celebration. As the night winds down, the tide outside creeps higher, the waves brushing softly against the stones of the quay. Guests step into the cool night, their breath misting, their laughter drifting into the dark. The harbour glows faintly in the moonlight, boats rocking gently as though swaying to the last notes of the fiddler's tune. You walk along the shore, the crunch of sand beneath your boots, the salty air filling your lungs. Behind you, the tavern's windows shine warmly, the sound of voices fading into the night. The fisherman's sneeze feels like a blessing now, tied to the rhythm of the sea, part of the memory of waves, laughter, and simple joys. And as you follow the moonlit path, your thoughts drift like a boat on calm waters, ready to carry you into the next quiet Victorian tale. This wedding unfolds not in England this time, but in the Scottish Highlands of the Victorian age. Picture rolling green hills, mist curling low across the glens, and a small kirk built of grey stone, sturdy against the winds that sweep from the lochs. Bagpipes hum softly in the distance, their notes rising and falling like the hills themselves. Inside the kirk, the ceremony begins. The guests are wrapped in tartan shawls, their cheeks flushed from the cold. The air smells faintly of peat smoke carried in from hearths nearby. The vows echo beneath the wooden beams, solemn yet warm. Just as the couple join hands, a sneeze bursts out, loud, startling, from a young cousin in the front row. The sound is so sharp it startles even the minister, who pauses before smiling knowingly. Here in the Highlands, sneezes are said to carry the soul's strength outward, and so the whisper begins. It is good luck. The young one has given the marriage his spirit. Smiles ripple through the pews, the solemnity lightened by humour and superstition alike. After the ceremony, the celebration moves to a longhouse near the loch. The fire blazes at its centre, smoke curling up through the rafters. The tables are laden with hearty Highland fare. There are haunches of venison roasted slowly, their flavour deep and rich, the meat carved thick and shared generously. Imagine the taste, earthy, tender, warming you from the inside out. Beside it are bannocks, flat rounds of oat bread, simple yet filling, spread with fresh butter. Bowls of neeps and tatties, turnips and potatoes mashed smooth, sit steaming, their scent comforting. A great haggis is piped into the room with ceremony, its peppery, spiced aroma filling the hall. Guests cheer as it is cut open, the rich filling spooned onto plates. For sweet dishes, there are clooty dumplings, dense puddings made with dried fruit, cinnamon and cloves, boiled in cloth until rich and dark. Slices are served with drizzles of cream, the flavour deep and spiced, like a winter night captured in food. Shortbread, crisp and buttery, is passed in baskets, its simplicity a perfect balance to the heavy feast. Whiskey flows freely, golden and sharp, warming throats and hearts alike. For those less inclined, mugs of steaming tea are offered, their fragrance soothing against the chill. Laughter rises with the crackle of the fire, voices weaving together with the drone of pipes and the stomp of dancing boots. And yes, sneezes continue to punctuate the night. Perhaps from the pepper in the haggis, perhaps from the smoke curling in the rafters, or perhaps from the whiskey's heat. Each sneeze is met with laughter, sometimes even with a toast, to health, to fortune, to love. It becomes a rhythm in the music of the night. As the dancing slows and the fire burns low, the loch outside reflects the moon, still and silver. Guests drift out into the cool air, their voices softened, their footsteps crunching on frosted grass. The mountains rise dark and steady around them, their silence a counterpoint to the fading music. You step to the water's edge, the loch lying calm, the stars bright above. The memory of that sneeze lingers, folded now into the warmth of fire, the richness of food, and the laughter of Highland kin. It becomes not an interruption, but a blessing. One more note in the timeless song of weddings and hearths. and as you turn from the loch, your breath clouding softly in the night, your mind drifts gently onward, ready for the next quiet chapter in the Victorian tale. Now picture a Victorian wedding not in a church or a hall, but in a grand garden sprawling behind a country estate. The season is late spring, and the air is filled with the hum of bees and the scent of blooming roses. White tents flutter gently in the breeze, their canvas glowing softly in the sunlight. Birds call from the hedgerows, and the grass underfoot is cool, damp with morning dew. The ceremony is held beneath a great oak tree, its branches heavy with leaves. Guests sit on wooden chairs arranged in neat rows, parasols shielding them from the sun. The bride walks slowly down a carpet of petals, her gown rustling softly, her bouquet filled with lilacs and violets. Just as the officiant begins the vows, a sneeze erupts, from the gardener, of all people, standing discreetly in the back. Perhaps it was the pollen from the flowers, or the dust carried by the breeze, but the sneeze is sharp and unmistakable. Laughter flutters through the guests like leaves stirred by wind. The bride glances over her shoulder, smiling, and the tension of the moment eases. Some whisper that a sneeze during a garden wedding is the earth itself blessing the union, a token of nature's approval. The vows resume, but the memory of that sneeze lingers like a secret shared. The reception spreads across the lawn. Long tables draped in white cloths are set with dishes both elegant and plentiful. There are platters of cold roast beef, sliced thin, with horseradish sauce to tingle the tongue. Bowls of crisp green salads dotted with radishes and herbs bring freshness to the feast. There are pigeon pies, their flaky crusts golden, filled with tender meat and savoury gravy. For sweets, the tables hold towers of syllabub, frothy cream flavoured with wine and lemon, light and cooling in the warm air. Trays of fruit tarts gleam like jewels, filled with strawberries, currants and gooseberries, each bite tart and sweet together. A great sponge cake layered with jam and cream sits proudly at the centre, dusted with sugar that sparkles in the sunlight. Lemonade is served in glass pitchers, its citrus scent sharp and refreshing, while chilled champagne flows for toasts, the bubbles tickling noses with every sip. Children chase one another between the tables, laughing, their shoes scuffing the grass. Musicians play beneath a canopy, their violins lilting gently, the tunes floating on the breeze. And yes, sneezes punctuate the afternoon, drawn out by pollen and perfume, by dust stirred from the gravel paths. Each sneeze is greeted not with annoyance, but with cheer, as though it were another form of laughter. Guests joke that the flowers themselves are joining in celebration, their pollen a mischievous guest at the party. As the sun lowers, lanterns are lit, their soft glow spreading across the garden. The air cools, carrying the faint fragrance of roses and cut grass. Fireflies blink among the hedges, their lights flickering like tiny candles. Conversation grows softer, music gentler, as the day winds into evening. You find yourself walking slowly among the lanterns, the laughter of guests fading into a calm hush. The sneeze that once interrupted the vows now feels like part of the tapestry of the day, a reminder that even the most perfect garden carries its surprises, and that small interruptions can become the sweetest of memories. The stars begin to appear one by one in the pale sky above the oak tree. The night stretches quietly around you, as though waiting to guide you softly into the next and final chapter of the Victorian tale. Imagine now a Victorian wedding that takes place not in the bustling city, nor in a quiet village, nor even in a garden, but in the great hall of an ancient castle. Its stone walls rise high, tapestries hanging heavy and old, their patterns faded by time. The air carries the faint chill of centuries, mingled with the scent of beeswax candles flickering in iron sconces. Outside, the wind sighs across the moors, brushing against the castle walls like a low lullaby. The ceremony is held in the great chamber. Long windows let in pale daylight, painting the floor with patches of colour from stained glass. The bride, wrapped in satin that gleams faintly, walks slowly across the flagstone floor. The groom waits beside a carved wooden altar, his nervous hands clasped behind his back. The officiant speaks, his voice echoing softly, as though the castle itself were listening. And then, true to our tale's theme, a sneeze breaks the solemnity, this time from the bride's grandfather, seated proudly in the front. It is not a delicate sneeze, but a great booming one echoing against the stone walls, startling a few drowsy pigeons from the rafters. For a moment silence follows, then warm laughter spills forth. Someone whispers that the sneeze is like a blessing carried through time, a sign that even the oldest stones welcome new love. The reception unfolds in the banquet hall. Torches glow along the walls, and a great fire blazes at the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows. The tables groan with food fit for a castle. Roasted boar, its skin crisp and glazed with honey, sits at the centre, flanked by trenchers of beef, lamb and game birds. The smell is rich and hearty, drifting through the hall with every slice. Platters of bread, warm and crusty, are passed around, to be dipped in gravies and broths. Bowls of root vegetables, roasted until caramelized, provide sweetness beside the meats. There is pottage too, thick, savoury stew that has been simmered for hours, warming both body and spirit. For sweets, towering confections rise like sculptures, iced cakes layered with fruit preserves, marzipan moulded into delicate shapes, and puddings flavoured with nutmeg and cloves. Spiced wine is poured into goblets, the warmth seeping slowly into every guest. For those preferring gentler drink, there is milk warmed with honey, thick and soothing. The air is alive with voices and music. A small ensemble plays violins and flutes, their notes weaving gently around the hall. The fire crackles, laughter rises, and even sneezes carried by smoke and spice are folded into the rhythm of the evening. Each one earns a cheer, a toast, or a blessing, as though the castle itself has given permission for imperfections to become joys. As the night deepens, the torches are dimmed, leaving only the glow of the fire. Guests drift into the corridors, their footsteps echoing softly against the stones. Outside, the moors stretch vast and quiet, the sky filled with stars, the castle standing steady against the winds of time. You linger a moment longer by the fire, watching its embers glow like tiny stars on the hearth. The sneeze, the laughter, the food, the music, all have folded together into a story both fleeting and timeless. A Victorian wedding, remembered not only for vows and feasts, but for the small human interruptions that made it alive. And as you step into the still night, the castle behind you sighing gently with its ancient stones, you let your thoughts drift further, into silence, into comfort, into dreams. Gentle outro. May these memories guide you into peaceful dreams, dear friend. Each sneeze, each laugh, each bite of forgotten feasts has been a soft step on the long path to rest. If you drifted off somewhere along the way, let me know below. Sweet dreams to you. And now, this is Boring History for Sleep, signing off in the softest whisper. Good night.